Alright, so today we're going to look at percents in equations. Yesterday we did proportions. Today we're going to set things up a little bit differently. So the essential question for the day will be this: how can I use equations to find percents? So before we do that, we're going to have to figure out, okay, as I go through when I'm making equations, basically what I do is translate things. So let's go through and figure out is always means equals. You got it. So, is means equals. Then we have the word what. They'll say what percent or what is. When they say what, that's always going to be your variable. So I generally choose X. Then of generally means multiply. Now as I was doing some of the examples that come up on the next page, there are a couple times when it actually is going to be divide. And so we've got to figure that out. It kind of goes with this. You know how is on the top and of is on the bottom? So generally, the is ends up being, or the is always equal. The of generally ends up being a multiply. But there are a couple of special cases, so let's just go through some of the problems together and we'll see. So this right here, I've got 10 problems and I would like you to go through them. Hopefully you've been through this lesson in class. If you haven't, then you can watch me do a couple. Otherwise, this is just extra practice for you. So why don't you go through and try several of them on your own, and then pause and come back when you're done. Alright, so basically what I'm going to do is going to go through and translate. So as I look at this one, it says what percent of 25 is 17. So I see the of, I see the is 17. So when you see it, it says is 17, so it's going to equal up to 17. Then it says what percent of 25. So what percent of 25 of is generally times. So then I look at that and I'm like, hey, okay, so line down, how do I undo times 25? Divide it by 25, divide it by 25, and so I get x equals, oh gracious, I don't know. So you pull open your handy dandy calculator and you say, all right, 17 divided by 25. That gives me 0.68. The problem is it says what percent. This right here is a decimal. Percent is always out of 100, so I'm not done yet. I've got to multiply over, and so I get 68%. This is really why I'm a big fan. Had I done it with a proportion, I've got what percent. So what percent of 25 is 17. It's the same problem because I've got the 17 divided by 25. It just shows you the multiply by 100, and sometimes people forget that when they do it the equation way. So be super careful and make sure that you multiply your percents by 100 to get the 68%. So again, if the equation doesn't work so well for you, then feel free to hop back to proportions. But I want to make sure that I'm giving you this way to do it as well. So let's try the next one. It says what percent is 10 of 100. This one, the order is just kind of goofy. I don't like it, but there it is. So we should probably talk about it. If I were going to just translate straight across, then I would come up with what percent is 10 of 8. But this doesn't make sense because it doesn't come out that way. So really, as I think about it more, if I were writing an equation on this one, I'm just going to go right over here and make one of these. What percent? So what percent is 10 of 8? As I look, if I were writing it as an equation, I think I would go back in here and write what percent of 8 is 10. I think just the way it's written is not so good. So if that makes you not want to use equations, that's okay. This is not very often that this happens. This is like the one time that it gets a little bit messy. But what percent of 8 is 10 is a better way to do it. So if I do that, then I end up doing, so 10 divided by 8, divided by 8. So 10 divided by 8, it's going to be bigger than 100%, which is totally cool because 10 is bigger than 8. So when I do that, I get x equals 1.25. But what do you remember? I'm looking for percent, so what do I have to do? Vroom, vroom. Yeah, so it's gonna give me x equals 125%. When it asks for what percent, you may just want to choose to do it as the proportion, and that is totally cool because then that reminds you to do the multiply by 100 because you do it right away, and you'd still end up with 125%. So let's try this one. What percent is 63? So is 63, and it's what percent of 84? So x times 84 equals 63. Really, these what percent ones, honestly, at this point in time in your life, I would say just go for the proportion, because then it's what percent is 63 of 84. Okay, so you can do it that way. Or if I were to come back over here to my green, how do you undo times 84? Divided by 84, divided by 84. Is this one going to come out nicely? I think they're both divisible by 9, so maybe 63 divided by 84. I get 0.75, but because it's a percent, so x equals 0.75, but because it's a percent, got to multiply by 100. So x equals 75%. Right? So again, these percent ones, just to be careful, you might want to just stick with the proportion. But again, you get to make your own decision if you can kind of see through that kind of trickiness of the writing. It's okay. So let's keep going on. The next one, way easier. So let's see. I'm going to skip number 4 because we've already done a whole bunch like that. Let's go to number 5. Find 45% of 60. All right, so let's look at 45%. When you're writing that, can you just write 45%? No, because on your MCA, they're not going to have a percent button on the calculator. So even if you do now, it's really not helpful. So what do I have to do to that 45%? Yep, I'm going to write 0.45. I have to turn it to a decimal first. Then of 60 equals whatever it will be. So these are the ones when really these are easier as an equation if the equations work for your brain. So when I do that, I just get 27 and done. This next one, 325%. So 3.25 of means times 52. So 3.25 times 52. Should the answer be bigger than 52? It should be. So when I do that, I get 169, which makes sense because it's, if I did 52 times 3, that would be about 156, so a little bit bigger. Yep, that makes sense. All right, let's keep going. Find 1% of 3.620. I think that says 3.620. We'll just assume that it does. So 1%, how do I write that as a decimal? 0.01 of 3.620. So I just go, put that in my calculator, and when I do that, what do you get? You actually just 0.03620. Super tiny number, but that's okay. Let's see. This next one, it changes a little bit on how it's written. So 300% of K. How do I write that 300%? Yeah, 3.00 of K is 42. So how do you undo this times? Got it, you divide by 3. Divide by 3. So K equals 14. So 300% percent of 14 is 42. Let's see. We've got 2 more. All right, so next one, 33.3% of, no, 33.33% of P is 19. What is P? So let's think about this for a second. 33.33% of P is 19. Do you remember 33.33%? What fraction is that? You're right. That fraction is 1/3. And if you remember that that's 1/3, this will be a lot easier question. So it's really 1/3 of P is 19. Oh no! How do I undo times 1/3? You multiply by 3/1. And when I do that, P is 57. Now, you might say, Beav, I wouldn't have come up with that. Okay. Well, then you've got 3 3 1/3. You would find that that was 3 3 3 3 3. Okay? So you have to make that into a decimal. So 0.333333333 times P equals 19. So you would divide it out, and let's see. If you did 19 divided by 0.3333333, you'd get 27.000000000. No, 57.00000 something. I hit a wrong button. 57.00000 something. So we could just come up with 57 would be good enough on that. All right, one more, 70%. So I got to write that as a decimal. So 0.70 of C is 49. So how do I undo the times 0.7? I divide it, 0.70. So 49 divided by 0.7 or 0.70, they really mean the same thing. Then my C is 70. Does that make sense? 70% of 70 is 49. Yeah, because the C has to be bigger because you're taking less than 100% of it. So there we go. Hopefully those are helpful. Again, you might really like the equations. You might think the equations totally stink. And if you want to go back to the proportions, I highly recommend that. It seems to be easier for me personally to organize. But if you like the equations better, then have at it. So hopefully this was helpful. You have a fabulous day, and we'll talk to you later.